Those of you Those of you here for the first time and don't know me, hi, I am Shivangi Chaturvedi, Digital Media Executive of Edvantage India. I'm more than happy to welcome our guest for today, Govind Hundgenn, as our guest for the evening. Did I say that right?
Well, almost right, but it is Hundgenn.
Hundgenn, okay. Govind Hundgenn, okay.
Hundgenn.
Before Hundgenn.
Hunjan. That is how you pronounce it. Hundgenn.
Hundgenn.
Yeah, but it's
Right.
okay. I mean, you only need to address me by my first name, so that's fine.
Okay, fine. We are delighted and honored to have you with us here, sir. So, when I talk of the oil and gas industry, the commodity cycles, the challenges faced in planning the capitals, increasing the operational risk, it makes it more necessary for us to go for smarter, efficient decisions. So today we are going to discuss upon how digital transformation proves to be a valuable insight to the oil and gas industry and how the shift towards digitalization has created job opportunities in oil and gas MNCs. So before we begin, I'll briefly introduce my guest today to all of you. Govind sir is a graduate from UPES, batch of 2016 in petroleum engineering. Graduated during the time when oil price had hit USD 30 per barrel. He started his career when even the most orthodox oil and gas companies had started opening up digital solutions and how they were working in sustaining business in unpredictable environment. He worked for 2 years in CGI, setting up knowledge management portal for a super major. Later, he shifted to technical sales of digital solution of SKO Energy Solutions. He works in petroleum data management in RIL E&P now. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Shivangi.
So, before we start, from your end, we would like to know about your journey and how it has been in the oil and gas industry so far.
Okay, so as you have rightly pointed out, I graduated in 2016, and right now I have about 5 years of experience in the industry. My first company which I joined was a company called CGI. It's the fifth largest IT company in the world. But unlike Infosys, Wipro, and TCS, it's not based in India. Their headquarters is in Canada. And I have worked there for 2 years. So at that point of time, the oil price was at $30 per barrel. And when I joined the company, it wasn't the most lucrative job that I really wanted to do at that point of time, I would say. But the kind of job that I had, and I had never thought of doing something like this when I was actually studying petroleum engineering. So I had to basically work on making possible about how a super major company which has already worked for 80 to 100 years, what have they really learned and how they can recycle and reuse their learnings for making their business more efficient. Now, these learnings could be technical. For example, there could be issues in the well site, and there could have been some downtime, or these issues could be very non-technical, and that is what they mostly were. For example, how was the company's experience entering the market of China and what they have learned from it. So I would deal usually in that. That's the good way of putting it across. Otherwise, in a very simple way, I basically copy pasted one Excel sheet to the other. I mean, that's a very simple way of describing what I did. And then I spent 3 years in SKO Energy Solutions. That was a very fruitful time, those 3 years, because that's when I actually learned how the petroleum industry works, especially in India, because SKO caters to the Indian market. And what are their challenges in the field of digitalization, but not only digitalization, what are their challenges in general, and how are they trying to solve it? And which are the digital solutions which could help them solve those challenges. So that is the role that I had at SKO, which was technical sales. And I've recently now joined Reliance, where I'm working at the intersection of business and data technology, but from the operator's perspective here. So that's been my journey of 5 years till now.
Okay, great to hear that. So before we dig deep, I'll just take a few minutes, and I'll introduce my audience to a new course that Advantage India has relating to oil and gas only. It's a machine learning and its application in oil and gas upstream. So it's basically a case study based training covering all the petroleum disciplines for all of you. It is a 30 hours training wherein you start from the scratch. Everything is covered from the scratch. Data mining application is taught, ML and DL application is taught, and the instructor is Mehdi Tadayoni, who has over 17 years of experience as a geoscientist and is PhD in data science. So this was the information for the course that I wanted to convey. And coming back to the questions, so I'll like to begin with the very scope of the topic. So how far, according to you, digitalization has grown over the years in oil and gas industry?
Well, okay, so the oil and gas industry really is quite old, and it has not been very receptive of having digital workflows, I would say. But that is not really the reality if you look at it. I mean, we have had some physics-based models which we have used for things like reservoir simulation or dynamic production simulation or understanding the flow behavior basically. And we have been using such softwares for the last 40 years or so. And that's not new in a way. What is new is how we can move away from these physics models that we have and make use of the data that we have captured and use it for making the business efficient or gaining something in production, basically having a value proposition. So that is something which oil and gas has not been very receptive to uh, because of a lot of reasons till now. But I think uh, where we are right now with the COVID situation, this is something that most of the oil and gas companies have to do to sustain their business and minimize their daily expenditure, which is basically their operating expenditure. But yeah, if you talk about the phases of digitalization, I mean, it starts with having the right technology to capture the data, which most of the companies have at this point of time. And when you have that, the first thing that you want to do is visualize the data that you have captured. So if you talk about drilling, for example, you have sensors at the rig. You want to see what those sensors are telling you at a headquarter office where you are managing 30 or 40 rig operations every day for a big company. And similarly, even in the production side, you have various different sensors at the wellhead or at the facility before and after the separators to understand what is the data really coming right now. So this is a part of descriptive analytics, which the industry has adopted to. Now they're trying to scale it up. They are trying to make sure that all of their assets and all of their fields at least are giving them the right data. So that's already done and it is being done right now. But what the industry now is also looking at is predictive analytics. So when you talk about digitalization, it's basically about how a computer machine is telling you what to do. Not really. I mean, the computer screen can tell you how the situation is, and then if you have evolved algorithms, which is in the predictive side, then the computer screen or the processes can tell you how the situation is right now and how it is likely to behave in future. And then you have a more advanced level of digitalization where the machine is also telling you how it can be prevented. So what is going to happen in future and how it can be prevented. We are at a stage where we can see the data right now, and we want to be at a stage where they can also predict what is likely to happen in a recent future. And that's where the predictive analytics come into picture, and that is also uh, that is basically something that the industry is working on right now. And the other thing also here is that when you talk about predictive analytics, you also have to look at where it is applicable at this point of time. So if you have a lot of data in the real-time drilling side, or you have a lot of data from the production operations, these are the likely areas where you can introduce predictive analytics to see how your just upcoming future is going to behave like. So those are the use cases. And then of course you will move into preventive analytics at some point of time, but I don't know right now how good or how good those solutions are in the industry right now. So that's something which is a little far-fetched for now. Yeah.
Very well explained. Now, in the former part of your answer, you said that there are some reasons because of which oil and gas industry is not being as receptive to the techniques.
Yeah.
So, would you like to throw some light on the reasons?
Well, I can. So the reason for that basically is that oil and gas is an asset intensive industry. When I say it's an asset intensive industry, what I really mean is that we are a subpart of the asset intensive segment of industries. And these industries basically are the ones which have one very common characteristic where they have actually invested a lot in one asset, which is a lot of capital expenditure. And then they are relying on that asset to make returns for them. So oil and gas companies do the drilling part and everything, but basically what they're doing is they're developing an asset for themselves. And that asset will keep producing for the upcoming sometime, maybe 10 years, 20 years, 25 years of oil and gas. And that is how they are going to gain their profit over spending all that capital money on the asset. And I mean, the car manufacturing also follows the same segment, but they have been very quick in digitalization. The other, even renewable would fall into the same segment. Refineries fall into the same segment. So when you have to actually, when you're actually dealing in capital investments, I mean, any equipment in drilling or any equipment or even sensor technology in the oil and gas, the software technology in oil and gas is far more expensive than it is in the other industries. And the reason for that is that there are high stakes at the business side. You can employ a technology, it could be new, and your asset may not perform up to the level it was performing right now. So the risks involved in introducing anything new in oil and gas is huge. And that is why oil and gas has taken its own sweet time to actually be very sure that do they want to do this or not. Because firstly, you cannot introduce a new technology into oil and gas. It has to have worked in any other industry. And then even then the companies are more receptive to the solutions which have already been tried in the oil and gas in any other country. And then they would think about, okay, maybe it works, maybe we should try it, because there's a lot at stake. So it's difficult to really be that agile in this environment for them. Yeah.
Okay, I have one question from the audience. I'd like to take that first. Utkar Sharma is asking, hi Govind sir, how are the roles different in data science now as compared to when you started out in CGI?
Okay, so I would like to give a disclaimer first. I have never worked in a data science team till now. But on a very broader view, I can give you an interesting answer, which is not only related to data science, but the development of a software solution itself. For example, if let's say the oil and gas industry has identified that they need something, so how do they go on about really introducing it into their daily workflow? So firstly, what they would need is to be able to make a software application out of it. And that would basically mean that you input data into an engine, and then there is a certain output in terms of visualization or simulation or whatever you're doing. So this is a very cross-discipline requirement of a cross-discipline team, which can actually do this, because a petroleum engineer needs to be involved, but at the same time you have to create that software application. So you need a developer, and then you also need to be able to test it, and the petroleum engineer and the developer need to be talking to each other, where you would need a business analyst. So it's a process which has been created in a very efficient process by the IT companies, which cater to different industries, which know how to really create that whole chain where a business analyst is talking to the business, and he is at the same time giving their requirement to the development side of things, which are working on the software, and then there is testing done on the software, and then it is delivered back to the business. So this is the whole system of how these people have come together to make digital solutions. But this is not the best way, I would say. I mean, this is the best way. There's no doubt about it. But if you have graduated or you are graduating right now in petroleum engineering, if you go into this setup, then you are very limited because you have learned a lot of things in the technical side. And now you're coming here, and the only work mostly that we are doing here is of a business analyst whenever we enter an IT company. So that is limited to translating the requirement. You are not really able to use your or use the technical skills that you have learned in any manner whatsoever. I mean, it's not a very bad thing. You can still grow into the development side, or you can become a very industry agnostic person if you have moved into that side of the things. But if you really want to be able to use your technical skills which you have acquired while studying, then you need to actually learn at least 2 or 3 of the skills which are required in this whole process of business analyst and the developer talking to each other and making a solution. So you should learn a bit of coding for that matter. And but learning a bit of coding is not really the answer. The answer is the problem that you're solving. So you don't really need to learn a bit of coding. What you need to understand is how the oil industry is right now doing some things and how they can be improved. Now, coming specifically to this question, yes, now that I've already mentioned that predictive analytics is something that are looking into, and some of their use cases are simply visible in the drilling and production side of things, even in the reservoir side for that matter. So what we need to really do is identify, let's say, problems in production optimization or any other problems that are there in the industry, and try to see what predictive models can really solve those problems. And you can probably learn this in a 2 to 3 month internship. And even if you don't have it, if you have access to online data of any company, like Equinor released theirs some time back, such things can actually help you develop those kind of models. There are some issues with those data that they have actually made public, but still you can work on it even if you have nothing. So that's where the story will start, because that's where you'll actually be able to work in an environment where you're bringing your skills in petroleum and learning your skills in the coding side of things, trying to see if the model works or does not work. So if you have that kind of experience, you are going beyond the current setup of the business and the business analyst and the developer. You are basically becoming more than that, and that's where you can actually accelerate your career.
So it's like saying in layman terms, getting to a different level is how you mean to accelerate the career, as in having skills of each role, some skills of each role. That's what
Yes,
is meant.
or maybe not. I mean, even if you have not done that, even if you have not really learned coding and actually did the coding to understand how the algorithm is working, even if you have not done that, but you have experience, maybe you have done an internship along with a CS graduate and he's doing the coding. But even if you have an experience to develop something like that, or even have worked on something like that, even if your work may have failed, what I'm trying to say is that the certifications are not going to help really. Everyone is doing that these days, but companies are more interested in seeing what you've already accomplished. So that's where you have to hit the spot.
Absolutely right. So, my next question would be, can you discuss about the role of millennial workforce in the digital world of oil and gas that we have come up so far?
Right. So, I mean, a part of my answer for this already lies in what I have
The
just told to
previous one,
Utkarsh. Yes, yes.
right?
But yeah, I would stress more on going cross-discipline even during your college education, even when you are looking at your major project or internships in the final year. You should try to scout for something. I mean, it's a choice, because when you are looking at digitalization, or when you then you have to do some projects related to it. It's just not that easy that you have graduated now and you are expecting the company to employ you, and then they will teach you, and then they will get the value out of you, because the market is not receptive of that idea at this point of time. So you should be able to do that yourself. Now the issue is, a person in third year will have to make hard choices. On one side, they have this whole technical domain where they can go into a pure technical role and actually be very directly working in that role. And the other choices, if they have to go into the digitalization side, then they need to do some, of course they'll need to learn coding, maybe not coding, but they'll have to understand how the process is, how it is reliant on data right now. So what data can we use and what can we come up with? They have to talk to companies for internships and projects and all. So it will take some time, and you have to make that decision if you want to go in this side or you want to remain there. The quickly you make that decision, then it becomes clear that what are the things that you have to do. And it's difficult to do that in pre-final or final year. But the market situation is like that. You have to do that as quickly as possible and then start working on it. Because if you haven't worked on it, there are a lot of people who haven't worked on it, and it becomes difficult to get employed or to get an employment of your choice in that case. There's a lot of people passing out as petroleum engineers, and it was easy for them back in 2012 or 2013 when there were very few petroleum engineers and the industry had the intake to actually absorb all of them. But now that is not possible. You have about maybe 1,000 petroleum engineers graduating every year, and the intake of the Indian oil and gas industry itself is not more than 150 or 200, I would say. And then you have service providers and the IT companies. But so the challenge is really, it's difficult, but you have to then look at the things that you have not done till now. For example, you have to normalize doing a 6 to 8 month internship after graduation. It's going to be okay to do it. It's okay to not actually have a job at all after your graduation. Sit back, maybe learn something new, and then also apply it in some ways. For example, you can do data science courses on Coursera, but you have to also then participate in some Kaggle competitions where you can actually demonstrate that you have been at a position where you have applied those things that you have learned. And it should be normalized for actually the millennials to do that. And it should also be okay if you are in your first job and you are not happy with it and you want to leave it. I'm not sure, it's not a very popular opinion, but I would say that you should go ahead and leave it. Unless or until work pressure is a problem. If you are leaving it because of work pressure, then it doesn't really make sense, because you're not expected to have a very good work-life balance in the first couple of years of your career. I mean, the people who need work-life balance are probably right now at this point of time, it is young mothers or married couples, or actually the parenting couples. We don't really need that kind of release. I mean, I would probably be putting it across as a probably not giving the right
it's subjective
direction.
let's say it's subjective.
Let's say it's subjective, but what I'm trying to say is that this is the time to push your boundaries. Now that's a good way of saying it. So you shouldn't really hide away from that.
But
So
then
these
again,
are the things.
leaving the first job because you don't like it puts another pressure, that 4 years of engineering and then we are leaving the first job, wherein getting one is so difficult these days. So
yes,
that
and I'm
comes as
saying
a
that
hindrance.
that should not really scare you from leaving the first job if you're not happy with it. It's okay to sit back and understand. You see, you have to be very open with the industry, and for that matter, industry also needs to be open with you. If you are really approaching somebody on LinkedIn and they are not replying to you, it becomes a problem. But you need to be in a position where you know what the industry is like, what are the problems different companies are facing. That's the good spot to be in, and for that you have to really get the time.
Absolutely right. Now, since we're talking of jobs right now, and I ask this almost to every guest where digitalization is the topic, it has cut down some jobs as well. Like some field jobs have been reduced because we have shifted to the newer techniques, and it has also, gotten us some new opportunities as well. So, what is your take on it? It's like, which the pros is the heavier one or the cons is the heavier one in this case?
Okay, so I was reading a JPT article a few weeks back which said that nobody talks about the chief of electrical engineering in companies anymore. because that position is not there for the last 70 or 80 years, because nobody in the companies are using steam engines to work their products on. So that is how, that is how actually the world has always worked, and this will also move on at a exponential rate. So what we have seen in past as the changing trend is very normal now, because the changes that are happening in these days are much more impactful. The rate at which they are happening. So if you're not open to learning new things, your job will become irrelevant at some point of time. And in the petroleum industry, the stakes are quite high, because you could be an expert in reservoir simulation, but if you see that the oil and gas industry itself is going down, then it becomes a problem, because your skills are of no relevance. It doesn't work that way, but the relevance of your skills starts declining. So what is really important, and for all of us to understand, is that it's not only at the beginning of your career that you need to keep upskilling. It is basically throughout the career to stay relevant, because a lot of things that a person or an expert in reservoir simulation would know would be very useful if he also knew a bit of something else and he could combine his skills. And that is how it goes on for everyone for now. So we should not be afraid of the job cutting. You see, you have to look at it this way: the oil and gas has to adopt to digitalization in order to reduce their operating expenditure, the expenditure on the assets that they are doing every day, to sustain in this environment. And that does include cutting a little bit of jobs, which is a part of the process. Otherwise, the industry itself will not be able to sustain. That is how you should look at it.
So basically, it's all about how we start working on the skills and start upgrading it actually.
Yes, going cross discipline as soon as possible. I think that's the key at this point of time, because the market has become so volatile in a way that
right.
The companies are not in a good position at this point of time. Yeah.
Exactly. Anybody from the audience, if you have any queries, you may put them in the chat box and we'll take them through the session. Okay, so what advice do you have for the working professionals, like who are working right now? What specific procedure they should follow, or what they should do if they have to transition into a data analytics role? So how should they go about it?
Okay, so when you're talking about the experienced people, how experienced are these people? In terms of number of years.
Depends, 2 to 3 years. Not a fresher, not a recently graduated person, or somebody's about to graduate. I'm talking of like 2 or 3 years of experience, or maybe maximum 5 to 6, and somebody wants to transition into data analytics. How should
Okay.
one go about it?
Okay, so there are a couple of ways of doing that. Basically, if you are already working in a company, it could be a company in the core domain or in the IT domain, and you want to move into data analytics at this point of time. There are 2 to 3 ways, I would say, of doing that. One is, frankly, to look at the kind of projects that your company is doing right now, and if you can really volunteer to do more than what you're already assigned, if your job is not in that domain. That's the first step that I would take, to see if my company is already working on these kind of projects and I can volunteer to work on those kind of projects. Apart from what I am already working on from the company responsibilities. And this may or may not really work. Most of the times it doesn't. So the other thing that you can do really is try to upskill yourself, which is doing some of, you don't really need the certifications, I would say, because there is a lot of content available on Coursera and you don't need to pay for the certificate. I would say you can still review the content. What is really important is that you work on 1 or 2 problem statements where those skills are getting used, because knowledge is something which you can gain throughout the day. It is not relevant for the organizations. What very small organizations or even the bigger ones the companies, what they look at is how you will be able to add value to their teams. So it is not important as to how many certifications you have done when it comes to digitalization. What is important is how you have been able to apply them. Whether you have been successful or you have failed at the attempt is also not very important. So if you can actually find some problem statements through the data that's already made public, or maybe you are not even working on the oil and gas problem. If you go on Kaggle, you will find a lot of problems in different domains. Pick the easier ones, start looking at something and start doing it. Because a lot of companies in India, even small companies, are coming up which want to really digitalize the operators' experience in the oil and gas. And such companies would be very um, glad if they can find workforce who have this kind of experience. And if not, I mean, if you have kept on upskilling yourself and there is a new pool of people who have the skill, then there could be a lot of companies in India who can do this work for the international oil and gas companies. And that's a big scope which we can all do. That is how we should look at it. And then, of course, there's other side. I mean, you can always get formal education in data analytics. And I mean, if you think you're not happy with the job right now, or you really have some reason to go into digitalization, and you think taking an off from career for 1 or 2 years makes sense for that, if you are that determined, then you should definitely do it.
Great. I'll take a question from the audience first. Avinash is asking a question. As a pursuing graduate, how can I start a career towards data science in oil and gas?
Okay, so the keyword here is data science and oil and gas. Because in which year are you right now, Avinash?
As a pursuing grad, yeah. Avinash, if you could unmute or you could just type in the chat box which year you're in, it would be easier for us to articulate your question in a precise manner. Third year.
Okay, so Avinash is in third year and he wants to start doing something in data science and oil and gas. So I think that's a good time to really look at it. To be very specific, I mean, in third year, you have started to learn the very technical subjects like reservoir engineering and production engineering. And you are at a position where you have to go for an internship in future, and then you also have your minor and major projects coming up. So I would say that there is a lot of opportunities the way I see it. What you really need to be able to do is to identify right now, for example, what are the simulation engines we are using, or what are the systems that we are using right now. You could do a project or two on simple things like, it's not simple, but you can do projects on something like virtual metering, where you have a set of data at the wellhead and you need to predict what would have been the pressure at the manifold or at the downhole of the well. So these are the kind of very simple analytics projects that you can look at right now. Depends again on the availability of data, but this will help you understand how you can apply physics. So you will have some readily defined equations which you will need to do this kind of simulation. Now the other side of the things is that you need to know how to put that in a code and run the simulation or run the code. For that, you will need some experience. So if you can get a CS student with yourself, but then the translation of the requirement becomes a complication. So I would say that you can learn it yourself as well. What you need to really look at is the coding part, and basically learning the syntax and the libraries that the language may have, and then start inputting the data. That will take about a month or two to learn if you are very new to it. But it will still only take a month or two to learn. So that's the good part. And then you can have a minor project on such a simple statement, and then you can probably start for looking for internship based on that. And then your major project can be on a little more complex problem. So that is how you can sail through this.
I hope Avinash, you got your answer. So I'll be moving to the last question that I have. Though throughout the entire session, we discussed upon the diverse skill set one should have and focusing on the upgradation of skills. But if you have to sum up into a nutshell, specifically for the COVID batch that is graduating and for the further batches to come, what exactly should they keep in mind when they are entering into this industry where digitalization is there, and what skills should they keep in mind? What exactly the procedure should they follow so that they can ace the placements and they can have an upper hand?
Okay, so if everyone learns the skills, then the situation remains the same. But yeah, I understand that's not gonna happen. So see the skills required. I can be very specific about the skills required again, but I would still say that you need to look at the fundamentals of how you are building your resume. So when I say it, what the fundamentals are, it's still what kind of problems the market faces at this point of time. In commercial side, we know that they are not in a very favorable position. But what are the problems or challenges that they face from the technical side? And you, as a petroleum engineer, are in a position to understand those challenges, even if you have not worked on it. But if somebody is explaining it to you, it will be easier for you to understand. Now, how can those challenges really be solved using data is the next question. And that is where this question which you have asked comes into picture, because that will need some kind of technology, and we'll need to learn that to be able to do it. And you can learn a lot of I would say you will need to learn coding for that. uh, Even if you're not learning coding, you need to have a team of people among yourselves where somebody knows coding, and you are trying to see if the solution will fit or not, and you are testing it. And for that you will probably need Python or R. Most of the people are working on Python now, though R is more data science friendly, but I don't know the reason, because I don't use both of them very much. So, but you need to learn any one of these. You need to be able to do very simple things on them. You need to know how the syntax is, the very basic thing. Then you need to know the kind of libraries they have. And I mean, the kind of libraries or functions that they have. What are the applications of those libraries? And how can you input real-time data or manual data into it and run the simulation and get the results out? And then you need to learn a bit of visualization, which you can do either on the language itself, or you can also use Excel for the visualization part. So this is the truth about any technology that you have to work on, and then you have to see how well it is actually helping the business or not, in a way. So when we talk about, I mean, this is a process that you have to look at. Now, a lot of times you are looking at Python or R, because people tend to go the other way. We look at it in the reverse side. We know these are the skills that are required in the industry, so we'll learn them, but we don't know why or where they are being applicable. So what I'm trying to say is that we should put equal emphasis on the first statement, which is to be close to the technical side of any company that you're working in or you want to work for, and try to see what the people actually are doing there, and how are those challenges, I mean, how can they be solved? I mean, this is how you actually get good internships as well. You have to keep that mindset. You cannot just look at the other part, which is about technologies. Obviously you need to learn that, because it will be useful at some point of time, but both the parts are equally important, and you need to know both of them to be able to get in a position which you like working on, or where there are really challenges, or you are satisfied with the career growth you're getting. Yeah.
I have another question uh, from Avinash. Is this the right platform to ask the questions related to how can I get into some service-based companies like Schlumberger and Halliburton as a fresher? They have their individual exams right now. Uh, they have the how and what are the pattern for the exams? Didn't get any clarity about it. Uh,
Yeah.
Schlumberger and Halliburton, I guess, mainly for the campus placements.
Yeah,
Um,
I wouldn't know that.
if you would like to
I wouldn't know about the
address.
exam really, Shivangi and Avinash, but what I can really again tell you is that Both Halliburton has set up their data science team in Bangalore, which is looking for international projects. So again, they are not looking at the conventional side where you have the business analyst and domain knowledge and IT knowledge in a segregated manner. They are looking for, and they have already recruited a lot of people who have a cross-disciplinary skills, which will bring them a lot of returns and make the process much more efficient. And the same goes for Schlumberger, who has recently done a joint venture with a Rockwell automation company. The joint venture is called Sensia. And these are the new things which are happening in the digitalization from the market side. But I wouldn't really know what kind of exam they're conducting. That's again something that you can only understand from the people who have given such exams.
I would suggest Avinash be active on LinkedIn, especially like connect with the people already in the company, so you can maybe have a conversation with them. And mainly these companies come for campus placement, so even nobody can actually give you a detailed, uh, answer to the question that you asked. So yeah, with that, I was done with the set that I had. Any other questions from the audience? If you would like to ask, you can unmute even, or you can type them in the chat box. Else, we'll be closing the session. Anything, sir, that you need to address towards as a
Yeah.
conclusion?
No, before that, I actually wanted to comment one thing here, which is really about how you are approaching people on LinkedIn, because we have talked about keeping a very open touch with the industry, and that will involve you talking to people on LinkedIn. But a lot of times, what I hear is that we have tried to approach a professional, but they have not really gotten back to us, and things have not really progressed, and so on. One thing that I really want to emphasize here is when you are approaching somebody on LinkedIn, don't start with "Hi, how are you?" I mean, it may work for some people. It has not worked for me. I have tried that in past. Not really, but I know that it hasn't worked for me. Be very specific about who you are. Introduce yourself in one message, and be very specific about what you want to talk about. I mean, that's probably so. What will happen is a person will either not reply to "Hi, how are you," the probability of which is very high, by the way, or a person will look at your message, which will be this big message, and they won't reply to you. But in the big message, you have got given all the information that you were seeking from him. So probably they are not helping you because they don't have any idea about it. And the person who would know or who would be familiar about it with it, they will definitely reply you back. So don't start with a "Hi, how are you?" That doesn't work. Yeah.
Avinash, you now know how to start conversing with people.
And that
Okay,
was not for Avinash, it was just for in
yeah,
general.
okay. Okay, Kajal has one question. I am in TYBSc Geology. How can I add value to get an internship?
What is a TY
Could you please elaborate upon TYBSc Geology? Science. I think she means BSc Geology, if I'm not wrong. Was
Okay.
TY a typo? I think it's BSc Geology.
Okay. So in geology, if you want to look at the digitalization side, the very simple things that we have right now is on the side of seismic, and we're both predictive. I mean, automated workflows and cloud services are getting very famous. So at this point of time, either you can get a master's in petroleum geology course, which can help you get acquainted with the petroleum side of things, uh, or you can get upskilled in the data science side to see how's the seismic process working, what is the kind of data that they are capturing, and the kind of automation engines that are available in the market for interpretation side. I mean, you can search on this and you can upskill yourself, which I think is a more challenging part right now, because doing a master's in petroleum, or for that matter data analytics, would be better. It would give much more exposure.
Yeah, I hope Kajal, your doubt is sorted. Okay,
Okay.
great. I am done with the questions, and I think so are they.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for taking out time on a Sunday and being there with us, sir. It really means a lot. Before ending the session, I'll once again talk of the course for anybody who missed it in the beginning or was not there, because there were some people who joined in between. The course that I talked of in the beginning, a very great opportunity for those who want to excel in the machine learning and application oil and gas, want to have knowledge about it. It's a 30 hours training where you start from the scratch. It's a case study based training covering all the petroleum disciplines. You get to do data mining application, MLDL application, and the trainer is Mehdi Tadayoni, who has over 17 years of experience and holds a PhD in data science. So for any further queries, you can reach out to us on any of our pages, and we'll be glad to help you out. With that, we come to the end of the podcast. Thank you, everybody, for attending it, and thank you, sir, for once
Uh,
again giving
I'm so
time.
sorry I joined
Yeah,
late. Can I ask a question?
yeah,
Yeah.
sure,
Yes, go
please.
ahead.
Yeah. So hello everyone. My name is Ali Haris. I'm an postgraduate student. I have completed my master's in applied geology from Aligarh Muslim University, and now I'm looking forward to make my prospects in geology. So, what tips would sir would like to give me in order to make a better career in geology? Because I'm starting to look for jobs in geology now.
Okay, so Ali, one of the sides that you have in geology is the non-petroleum side. I mean, you can still look for companies looking for geologists which are not in earth science, which is in earth sciences, but not in the petroleum side, which I understand will be rare. So you will still have government companies like Coal India or the Geological Survey of India who would need geologists from time to time. But when you talk about the petroleum industry, yes, of course, there is a need for geologists, but right now uh, we probably are in a position where there is a much higher need for example, seismic surveying and so on, because the government of India has mandated the public sector companies to have the surveys completed of large areas for the coming time. So I would say maybe you have to look at that side of the things if you want to enter petroleum engineering. Otherwise, it's about really applying in the big service provider companies, which I think you can do on their website or talk to them before applying, or reach them out on LinkedIn.
The
But
main
that's the extent of what I have. Yeah.
the problem that we freshers are facing is because wherever we are applying, they're asking for a prominent experience. So right now I've applied approximately in 26 companies, and they too are asking for at least 22 or 3 years of experience. So that too what we are facing the problem for.
Yeah, that problem is something which is again going. It's very common, and the reason for that is because the companies do not want to invest in teaching you about how they are working and then expecting a return from you. At this point of time, companies cannot afford that, so they really want the person to have worked in some company, so they can just come into their company and start delivering from day one. So the issue here really is uh, about that training part which the company has to do. Now, again, if you want to be able to surpass that, one thing is you can do some kind of internship, a long 4 to 6 month internship, because employment is anyways not in, it doesn't seem likely in near future. So if you want to go for an internship where your skills are being applied, that is something which can convert into a full-time opportunity later on, or it can give you access to other companies who need that 2 to 3 years of experience.
Can you please help us? How can we apply to certain internships, and how can we get internships?
Okay, so see, again, for getting internship, the fundamentals remain the same. You have to scout or search for the companies who are looking for geologists. Then the other thing, the important part is you have to understand what is the kind of work that they are doing right now, and how you can get a short-term project with them because of your MSc in applied geology, which is where the main issue is. You may not get a lot of replies, or you may get them, but that is how you really find a relevant internship for yourself. because if you will be working on a short-term project which they have right now, this will definitely add to the work experience that you already have. So 6 to 8 months of internship is a good way to go about. Again, it's not easy for small companies to give away internships, but if you have reached out to people on LinkedIn trying to understand what they do and what their problems is, that is the first step in really being able to do it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, sir, for being so
Thank you,
patient with the
Shivangi.
questions. Okay, I'll end it now. Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you,
Stay
everyone.
safe.